Just want to welcome you to the meeting. This is our 11th meeting of the West Falls Church TSA Plan Amendment Task Force and our first virtual meeting. And because this is the first virtual meeting, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items to begin. First, for those who are not familiar with WebEx, I'm sure it's pretty similar to a lot of other video conference services that you've been using recently. But I just want to go over a couple of the functions of it real quick. So if you hover your mouse cursor over the center of the screen, you should see some icons pop up at the bottom of the video. The circle to the far left is the mute button. If it turns red, then you're muted. If it's black, then you're unmuted. The circle to the right of that one is for toggling your video camera on and off, and follows a similar scheme. So when it's red, your video camera's off. When it's black, it's on. And then next to that is another button that has a silhouette of a person with 3 bars at the bottom. This opens up the participant menu, which is going to be pretty important. So once you click on that, it should open up a window on the right side that has a list of participants. And at the bottom right hand of that window, you'll see a small icon that looks like it has a hand on it. This activates the raise hand function. For our task force members, we're asking you to use the raise hand function. If you have a question or a comment, click that and you'll notice that it will show a little hand icon next to your name in the participant menu. So once that appears, just wait to be recognized and then unmute yourself and make your comment, ask your question, then remute yourself and be sure to click that icon one more time. Otherwise, it will stay up and it'll look like you still have something to say. I know in the past we've had task force members ask questions in the middle of presentations. This time we're going to do it a little bit differently. So if you have a question, please just make note of it during the presentation and then wait to ask it either immediately after the presentation or during the Q&A session at the end. And for the members of the public that are attending, you'll use the raise hand feature as well to participate during the Q&A session. We are planning on having a public Q&A just before the end of the meeting. So when we reach that point, please use that button to raise your hand, and we'll try and respond to everybody in the order that they raise their hand. And the same thing goes for you. Once you're recognized to speak, you'll actually hear a series of beeps, which will indicate that you've been unmuted. You can then ask your question or make your comment, but just be sure to click the icon again to lower your hand afterwards. And for the members of the task force, as I just mentioned, we're asking you to keep your microphone muted unless you're the active speaker in order to minimize any background noise or feedback or echoes. And then I'd like to note one more circle at the bottom that looks like a speech bubble next to the participant button. This is the chat function. So if you click on that, it will open up a chat window, which will allow you to send messages to other panelists. We'd like to encourage people to use this function only if they're running into technical problems. So if that's the case, please send a message to Stephen Waller from DPD and he can try to assist you. Chat will not be monitored for non-technical questions, so just be sure to ask those at the appropriate time using the raise hand feature. And finally, I want to let everyone know the recording of this meeting is going to be posted online likely later this week for you to view. So I'll post it on the project webpage, and I have everyone's email address, so I'll send a link to the recording out to all the task force members and the members of the public that have registered to attend. And if you have any questions between now and I guess anytime next month's meeting, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email up on the screen in just a moment. And finally, I'd like to thank everybody for joining our first virtual meeting. This is our first attempt at a virtual meeting for the task force. So I appreciate everybody hanging in there with us while we get our feet underneath us. I don't expect tonight's meeting to go for the full 2 hours. But our agenda tonight is just to update everybody on what's happening, both with the development on the county side and the Wilmot, Virginia Tech, and what's happening on the City of Falls Church side of things. And so with that, we can move on to our administrative items. I had emailed out the meeting minutes for the February meeting to all the task force members last week. I hope you had a chance to review them. If I haven't received any emails from anybody indicating that there need to be any corrections or edits, but if you have noticed any, please speak up now and we can correct those for when we post them. And David, I know you normally handle the minutes, so I can hand it off to you for that.
Okay. Actually, well, first of all, I just put my hand up because I hope is my hand up? Can you see it? Let me make sure it is.
Your hand is up.
Okay. All right. They're just two small things. On the second page under housing, I think you're missing the second paragraph. You're missing a word. Members of the task force, you should probably put asked what the there's a verb missing. And similarly under water, third line, I think you want to say they instead of the in the third line. I mean, that's all. They're just typos. I don't have any substantive stuff. So I guess I should ask the rest of the task force if you've got any questions or comments or changes to the minutes. I'm hearing nothing. So perhaps we should approve them then. Do I need to make a motion for that?
We can, and I guess if everybody wants to do like a.
Okay, I'm not hearing anybody say anything, so
Yeah.
unless somebody
Second.
comes with their audio, okay, fine, all right. So do we want to just vote everybody in favor of, Joe, why don't we just go by aye, and if somebody objects, you can say so. So all in favor of adopting the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, any abstentions? I think we're okay on that.
All right. And so moving on.
This might be,
I don't know.
I was going to bring up that
Yeah.
issue. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. This is not actually on the agenda, and I want to bring it up because it was a concern of Paul's about noise at the metro. And I spoke with Brian and Michelle about this earlier when trying to come up with the agenda. And we sort of were of the opinion that that it was outside of the normal sphere of what the task force was asked to consider, which is should the comprehensive plan be amended? And relevant to that are things such as what are the effects of amending it and being able to engage in these other uses, building up more or having more extensive uses, things that are relevant to whether or not it should be amended. We did not see that noise at the metro right now from completely unrelated work really was an issue. Paul, who I'm sure will explain in his own words better than I, felt that it was. And I think what he probably is essentially saying is it's a matter of trust. If WMATA is not abiding by noise regulations now, how do we know that they will do that in the future? I'm still not sure that I would normally consider that to be relevant to whether or not the comp plan ought to be changed, but I think it makes sense for us to discuss it a little because there's no point in just leaving this as a seething issue. But I would remind everybody that what we're looking at here, after all, hasn't to do with things like construction noise and stuff like that, which normally I think would be addressed later. But we're really trying to look at if you change the plan, what is different and what is relevant. What I would like to ask Brian and Michelle, and I don't know, I don't see that Ben is on here, so maybe he's not here, but I'd like to ask a procedural thing because I am going to then let Paul bring this up a little bit. What I would like to know is this. Assuming that the planning commission approved the change in the comp plan, that then go to the board of supervisors. Is that correct? That's the procedure.
The planning commission makes a recommendation to the board of supervisors, who then
Then the board of
chooses to either adopt or
supervisors
not.
votes on it, and then at that point the plan is changed. Am I correct, though, that that does not mean that WMATA and Virginia Tech can just start constructing? They actually would have to file some sort of application, correct? Because all what that has been done is to authorize, is to allow the plan to be changed so these things could be done. Or am I incorrect about that?
That's correct, David. They would be required to go through be required to file a zoning application, a site plan. After
Mm,
that, we're required to get building permits. And in fact, the planning commission for the board of supervisors for the rail yard just across the highway next to the Westfall Church Metro station approved some development conditions when there was work going on over there back in 2011, 2012 or so that did state that any construction or improvements associated with a special exception amendment application would only be permitted between, I think it was between 9 and 7, would not be permitted between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. on Sundays and federal holidays. And so, it might be the case that, uh, a similar type of development condition could
okay.
be appropriate.
So if that happened, and certainly clearly it will be raised at that point if we get that point, given the problems that Paul and his neighbors have been having, it would be incorporated into some kind of conditions, construction conditions or something, and that could be, and that one hopes would have some enforcement mechanism. I know this is sounding hypothetical, but I can't believe, given the problems that we have now, that that's not going to be asked for if we get to the point where there's an actual application.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so with that, I think we should give Paul some time to talk about this, but I think the point is that this is really all something that should be part of should be addressed in connection with an actual application to develop this, which cannot happen until the Board of Supervisors has actually amended the comprehensive plan. If I've got that straight, okay. So I would turn this over to Paul to comment now.
Well, the first thing I'd say, thank you. I think I explained my reasoning in the email today. I don't know if everyone saw it, but relating to that email, Brian, is that email put in the official record?
It's not, and that's why a lot of these issues are best to be brought up. It's best if they're brought up during the meetings.
What is the procedure for putting it into the official record? I mean, certainly if we had a vote to put it in the record, it could be put in the record. Is that correct?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean, I guess, by the official
Well,
record.
the point is, there are records that are there are records that show what the board, what this task force discussed, and how the issues were addressed. And my request to begin with is because I believe this will be an ongoing problem, and it is a problem greater than the noise going on right now, as I explained in the email. So before, I would procedurally ask, how do we get it into the record? Because 3 years from now, or 4 years from now, when my neighbors come to me and say, you were on this group, how did this happen? I want there to be a record that it was raised, and if you're going to reject it, that it was rejected.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. A couple of things. One, in terms of official records, there's just a couple of things. One, obviously with our meeting minutes in the summaries that we do, right? That'll be recorded there. But also, if the task force wants to make that part of the letter and the communication with the planning commission and the board, like for their recommendation for the plan, it can, that would be then part of like the official like board process, planning commission process. So if the task force chose, that was one of the major issues for the task force, because the task force is concerned just to put that in some sort of letter and communicate that. The task force usually sends some sort of letter, either concurring with staff's recommendation on the plan or giving their own sort of opinion which parts of the plan maybe they don't concur with staff on. And so that, that, Paul, is probably maybe the official part that you're looking for. I mean, we'll certainly put it part of
I would like it
part
put
that
in the
maybe
minutes
gets
that
someone-
I raised this as an issue. Certainly, I think that there wouldn't be a problem, since we have these minutes, of saying that, of giving people context into what this discussion was. And that this could be, I mean, I've been a corporate secretary myself. You can put an addendum to minutes, can't you?
Well, I don't know if we need an addendum to the minutes. It'll be in the minutes.
Well,
But if you want a separate discussion of noise, I mean, if the group decides.
no. What I
That's-
want is that the minutes reflect that I raised this issue and that the email that I sent out is attached to the minutes. It's not a
Oh, I
state.
see.
It's
see.
not a state. It's not, I mean, we're not even getting to the substance of it yet. But I do want an official record of what went on.
That's fine. Sorry, I didn't fully understand what you were talking about.
So my email could be put in as an addendum to the minutes. Is there any other procedure that I have to do in order to get my email put as an addendum?
No, I think it can be a discussion when we go the next time to approve minutes at the next meeting. It would probably be part of the discussion at that point. But we have the email right now.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, having done that, because I think I see where this is going, I just wanted in the minutes. But, I explained my view before. It isn't a matter just of noise, although it is a matter of the vendor management by WMATA and by Fairfax County's oversight of WMATA. And I find Fairfax County and WMATA to be entirely lacking in their ability to manage vendors. And so as we look prospectively at years of construction adjacent to my community, I think I have no confidence at this point that we're going to see the vendors being appropriately managed such that the community isn't impacted. And all I want is, number one, and I don't understand why I'm getting emails from my neighbors at 2:45 in the morning. Maybe someone could explain this to me. Why I'm getting emails from my neighbor at 2:45 in the morning saying, gee, there are jackhammers going on right outside my window. And to me, to just simply go through a bureaucratic exercise of saying, oh, no, this is not the appropriate time to deal with this, just puts it off to a point at which the momentum is such that it can't be dealt with. If Fairfax County and WMATA cannot right now regulate the noise such that my neighbors aren't telling me at 1 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. that there is jackhammering going on outside their windows, then I think that directly relates to how extensive the development should be at the metro. So, what I don't like, and I've sort of had a series of bureaucratic impediments put in front of me. Oh, don't bring it up to the entire group. That was said to me. Or it's not appropriate for this stage. That was said to me. I outlined this in the email. And then what I see is going to happen is it's just going to get brushed off to the side. And then it's not going to be addressed now. And years from now, when this is in a construction phase, there's going to be extensive problems. So, the Lemon Road Civic Association has said that they don't want extensive changes to the amendment. And I specifically opposed them on that, and I gave the reason why. Now I'm thinking, as I see what's going on, as I see Fairfax County being unable to address this issue, that perhaps they were right. And I do believe it is exactly relevant right now to deal with the fact that we're going to have years of construction and it's not being appropriately handled now, when all my neighbors and I are asking is that there not be jackhammers going on at 3 o'clock in the morning. So that's what I have to say. And I'd like my email to be put in the official record, and I'm glad that this is being taped. And so if anyone else would like to explain to me why we shouldn't be concerned now about what's going to happen in the future, I'm delighted to hear it.
May I speak, Michelle and Brian, David?
Yes, and then
I know
Commissioner
I can't tell
Alfelder.
on this one. I can't see my hand up when I click on it, so I assumed that it was up, but
It is up, and then Commissioner Olfelder has his hand up as well, though. So
okay,
we
I'll
can
I'll be
hear from him
I'll be
after.
brief unless you want to give him the precedence here.
I was going to say, go ahead and speak, and then he can
Okay.
follow up on you.
I'll try to be brief about it. The thing I would ask, Paul, and I'm not sure you have an answer to this, but I guess I'd point up as, I mean, part of the problem is it seems to me that it should be being dealt with now. And I mean, it's a separate issue. It relates to track construction and all this stuff. And they promise not to make noise during certain times, but they're doing it anyway. So to me, the real issue is why is the county not addressing it better now? And I don't know, because I agree, it's outrageous. I saw what you said in your emails about noise at 2:45 in the morning and jackhammers and all. I agree with you, but it is kind of separate. But let's suppose, for example, that it does get addressed now, that the county does start clamping down a little more. Is there really anything that can be done now? I mean, you say it's relevant to whether you should allow more construction later. Well, let's suppose that actually it is addressed now. Does that actually make you feel comfortable enough that you know it won't happen again? And will it really be different whether the construction occurs under an amended plan and is extensive as they ask, or an unamended plan when they can still construct something by right? I guess I would encourage you to try to get this addressed now in respect to this particular incident and causation, because I don't think anybody can give you a guarantee that it won't happen again, no matter how well the county addresses it now. The only way it's going to be really addressed is, you know, if we get to the point where they actually file an application, really making sure that there are conditions in there that are going to address it and that can be enforced. Other than that, what I may have to suggest to you is that if you don't have faith in Ramada to do this, that I guess is legitimately something that your particular HOA can consider whether or not it wants to support this. But I don't think you're going to get some guarantee you can rely on, even if it's addressed now. And then I'll yield to Commissioner Oldfelder. Anybody
If I
else who
could, if I
wants
could just respond to that first.
Mhm.
Yes, nothing in life is guaranteed, but I have a better confidence if people act competently now than if they act incompetently now. And now both Fairfax County and WMATA are acting incompetently. And we have some people from my HOA here who can testify to what it's like to be woken up at 2:45 in the morning when the jackhammers are going. So you know what? Yes, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that there will be incompetence in the future. But right now, I would be much less likely to consider that to be likely if I saw some competence now, and it's not happening.
Okay, Brian, up to you to call on people.
Commissioner Olfelder, looks like you're muted.
Yes. Can you hear me right now?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. The current situation is very different from whatever's going to happen and flow from this task force and any future construction. Right now, the WMATA is operating with a special dispensation for when they can work and for the noise restrictions in order to complete the tasks that they're faced with at the current time as quickly as possible to try to get the station up and running again when they're ready. In the future, David's correct. When they come through with a rezoning and that goes through the process for approval, the question of construction hours can be addressed. Right now, you can't do, you're supposed to construct only work between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. And we would probably limit any future construction on a project resulting from the plan changes to those times. So it's not going to be a nighttime issue in the future with a future rezoning. So I think it's appropriate to go ahead and consider what a replanned station area would look like with the understanding that it's going to be, when it's actually being under construction, it's going to be different than the current situation. And there's the opportunity, as David explained, to make it clear through conditions at the time the rezoning is reviewed.
May I respond? I view that as a really bureaucratic answer. So I view it, once again, as a matter of vendor management. So I'll ask you directly, Commissioner, is it acceptable to you that there are jackhammers going on at 2:45 in the morning? Yes or no?
Oh, it's not. It's not.
Why is it happening? And why is it happening after many different complaints to Supervisor
Paul, I don't have the answer to that.
When are we going to have the answer?
When did it go off last? 2 nights ago?
It went up, no, this morning. If you read the email I sent, it was to this morning. I have emails from I reproduced emails from the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, and today. So, you know, and I first raised this in May.
I know it's an old
And
issue.
it's, you know, so I continue to have my neighbors tell me how they're being woken up in the morning. And what I've heard from you is a little bit of bureaucracy to tell me why I shouldn't be concerned about it, which
No,
distracts.
I'm not telling you shouldn't be concerned about it.
Then what? Show me. Then, Commissioner.
I'm telling you the issue will not occur in the future construction at the site.
Then establish credibility for that and make it stop now.
May I?
The two are not connected.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. You think that the two are not connected because you're acting in a bureaucratic manner, separating them out. I believe it's a matter of vendor management, and you're not managing your vendors correctly. I won't interrupt the email discussion anymore on this. But
Okay.
I think we need to pursue it further. I agree, and I don't understand. I don't know the answer as to why there hasn't been a response to the complaints and that it continues to happen, other than WMATA is rushing to try to get the project done. And so I will talk to John Faust and to Ben Wiles and find out where things stand with that. I haven't talked to them about it lately, and see what further can be done.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I'll say is, once again, I want the email with the reference to the first email that went on May 20th to be part of these minutes. So I don't want to take up any more of this time, and I appreciate your opportunity.
Thank you, Paul. Brian, I don't want to stand here much longer either, but I guess I want to first of all give anybody else on the task force an opportunity to comment on this, if it doesn't duplicate a lot of what Paul is saying, if anybody has an opinion on it. And then I would ask, again, briefly, is there anybody here from WMATA who can explain why this continues to happen, even though it's being complained of? And then I think we should drop it and move on, since I think Paul has got otherwise what he wants out of the meeting, I think. Anybody on the task force wish to comment on this?
Aaron has his hand up.
Okay.
So you know, Paul, we hear your frustration. I've lived your frustration and other issues. The MCA, we worked on that yard extensively, as well as the hours agreed to. So in all fairness to John, Commissioner Ohlfelder, you know, this is completely separate from what he's referring to. So to, you know, hold him accountable is just not tenable. This is an emergency situation. I feel for you, trust me, but this is not something where, you know, we can really address it here. It's not germane to this here. I understand your frustration, but I think we definitely need to move on, and we need to, you know, look at the task at hand and work towards that. This is why we're here. So I'm sorry you're having these problems. It's an emergency situation for matter. They've shut down all of Metro on the Silver Line. I can't use the Silver Line. So, you know, this is what's going on. We feel for you, but let's focus on this while we're here, because we're half hour in, and I personally have things I need to do pretty soon. So it leaves me limited time as probably others. We feel for you, not trying to diminish what's going on with your community at all. But as we used to say in grad school, this is BS, beyond the scope.
Now, well, I don't want to, I mean, we've discussed this before, so I'm not going to repeat it. The one thing I will add is that my neighbors informed me that work knocks off in the afternoon and then starts up again at 1 p.m. So to me, at 1 a.m. So to me, that's not a way of dealing with an emergency. And if you want to listen to my neighbors talk about it, it's not like this is going on 24 hours a day. And, you know, I do view it as a general scope of vendor management.
All right. Is there anybody else on the task force who wants to add and make a comment on this? And I can't see hands, so somebody else will have to call on people while I see them, but.
Stephanie, go
Looks
ahead.
like, well,
My
actually,
hand
it's
is
like
up.
Jenny and Jennifer and it looks like we got several people. Michelle, what do you want to do here?
Stephanie, so you put your
Not
hand
hands,
down, you
that's,
don't want to
sorry,
talk.
that's microphones. I can't, I guess I can't see people's hands.
Stephanie, you had your hand up a moment ago.
Yes, I just want to say that a couple things. This portends to how WMATA behaves as a neighbor. This is what we can expect in the future. And why are they working at night when the station is closed and there are no passengers there? And third thing, Fairfax County granted the waiver. Fairfax County can suspend the waiver and demand better behavior. Right?
Right, thank you, Stephanie. Do we have anybody else? Brian and Michelle, you'll have to call on people because I just can't see whether anybody else has got a hand up. Well, yeah,
I
yes,
think
guess I can. I don't see any
I don't
more.
think so. I see your hand and Commissioner Oldfelder's hand, but I think those were maybe just
Yeah, I think
left
you're
up.
right. What about, I'll take mine down. Is there anybody here from WMATA who can speak to this, like just in 2 minutes, so we can wrap this up?
Andy Scott, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, my name's Andy Scott. I'm with Metro's Office of Real Estate. Mr. Rothstein, I'm sorry to hear what you and your neighbors are experiencing. I don't have answers for you tonight as to why that's occurring, but that is unacceptable. We are trying to rush to get this done quickly. And there have been changes made to the noise ordinances to let us expedite the project. I would urge you and all the members here who represent neighborhood associations, we do want to respond to complaints, and it's a series of complaints received or down the road doesn't really help us. We'd love to hear real time the issues people are having. We have a complaint line that was set up, and I would urge your neighbors to complain. I mean, when they have
They
issues
have
like
been.
this, to be very specific about the time and what they heard.
have been.
And yes, I'm sorry that, and we will do our best to respond.
Andy, can you forward me that that complaint line and I can distribute it to the members of the task force?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Unless somebody else wants to say something about this, we have spent a lot of time on this, and so I think, with everybody's permission, let's move on to the rest of the agenda. Okay, you all right? Well, Brian, why don't
That
you
sounds good.
go ahead?
Of course. So give me one moment. So to start off, I'm going to actually hand it off over to Bob Pecora from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation to give a very brief update on some transportation-related items.
Yes, thanks, Brian. Good evening, everyone. This is Bob Pecora with Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Really quick, just an update on where we are with the transportation analysis. With West Falls Church, the plan amendment, we're working with Evan from EYA and Neil Kumar from Rushmore for the WMATA and Virginia Tech property sites or the project sites. And as they're working through on a concept plan that still has to be determined, they will be submitting a traffic impact analysis to the county and to VDOT to review. We're not at that stage yet. And, that's kind of like what we had mentioned back in February, that we're getting close. We're still not there yet. So it's just working through some of the details with the plans there and the land uses on the site to come up with the circulation plan that works for everyone. And that when the circulation plan and the building layout, the blocks that they have set aside for their development project, then we will be able to work with them to get their traffic impact analysis submitted to the county and also to VDOT for review. So the TIA takes about, once it's submitted, takes about 90 days or so for VDOT to provide the initial comments. In the past, even during this this weird time that we're in with the coronavirus, VDOT can still turn around a review of a TIA in about 60 days or so. They did that with us for the McLean project. So we were able to get the project in and just the review of the TIA in about 110 days. So a little bit different because everyone's staying at home or safer at home, but we'll be working with Evan and Neil from EYA and Rushmark to come up with the site plan that works for them, and then we'll provide them with comments, and then we'll also help them to get started with their TIA submittal to VDOT. Evan's going to probably talk about the transportation analysis during his presentation as well. Also want to give you a quick heads up on the I-66 eastbound direct access ramp to Metro. Probably have already seen construction started. Well, construction started by VDOT in April, and according to their website, they're looking for a possible completion of late this year. They don't have an actual date, and I have not spoken with the project manager over at VDOT about the project yet. So as more information is brought forward on that project, we'll be able to talk more about early, give more of an update on that construction project. So, but it's started, so that's a good thing. We were thinking it's going to be summer sometime this summer, but they've actually started in April. So that's a big plus. And it's not a year's construction; it's just under a year's construction. So that's also a good thing. That's it. I don't have anything else for transportation updates. But I'm going to be online for the rest of this meeting. If any questions come up now or later on in the evening. Thank you.
I don't see any hands raised. Are there any questions from the task force members related to that? All right, moving on. Next up, Evan Goldman from EYA. He's presented here a couple different times in the past for past 4 or 5 task force meetings. One of the developers on the WMATA site. He's also one of the developers for the City of Falls Church development at their high school site. And he's going to give us an update on what's happening on the city side of things. I'm going to pass control over to you, Evan. Let me know when you're ready.
So I'm ready. I'm just trying to see, my share content button is not on.
All right. Yep, I have to pass that over to you real quick.
Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, now. And then if folks can just let me know once they can see my screen.
I can see it.
Great. Okay, thank you all. So I'm glad we're back together. It's been 4 months or so, and I hope you're all surviving, doing okay. I'm in my kids' playroom, so please ignore the colorful wall and decor. But I'm going to give you a little bit of an update. We've been busy over the last 4 months. A few things we've been working on. We submitted our site plan to the City of Falls Church last week, which is a more detailed plan than what you've seen in the past, and I'll walk you through that tonight. And we've also been continuing to work with FCDOT and the county staff, WMATA, and Virginia Tech on kind of an overall grid for this neighborhood as it develops, as well as traffic planning, so that we can be prepared to present to you in the next meeting or two in more detail. So anyway, I'm glad to be back together. This, sorry, to go up here in a second. So the plan you're looking at, this is the proposed SESP submission that we just submitted a week ago. It's actually quite similar to what we had originally submitted and shared with all of you 6 months or so ago when we got our initial approvals for an SEE. And the way the City of Falls Church works is you get an SEE, which is a kind of high-level approval that kind of tells you your heights and densities, and then you get an SESP, which is much more detailed with architectural design and more detailed landscaping, and is your building permit for the civil and landscape portion. So, so I'm not going to share the entire 140-page document with you guys, but it is public and publicly available. It's long, but I'll share the highlights and things I think you guys might be interested in, and then of course answer any questions you may have. The key things that we were trying to achieve with the redevelopment of the high school site are still in place. So you'll see in a moment a grocery store at the corner of Haycock and 7 as the anchor for the retail. Broad sidewalks along Newport Pike and Haycock, along with shared use paths, so that people will have pedestrian safe access all the way around the site. A street that starts at Route 7 and goes all the way back to the metro, so that people will have better access to the metro, whether you're a pedestrian, a cyclist, in a car, with whatever your mode of transit may be. A retail main street surrounding the Commons Drive that will become, hopefully, a place where people will be able to gather again. So this project is intended to deliver in 2023. And God willing, by 2023, we will be gathering without masks and we'll have vaccines and life will be back to normal. But we have some thoughts about how that might change things if it isn't there yet, but just so you guys know, we are thinking about that. The plan you're looking at here today, the yellow building at the corner is our apartment building. It's about 390 some odd units. It has grocery store on the first floor and retail on the commons. We used to have open air loading kind of alley going through. We've now covered that. So that will be a kind of a benefit for the neighborhood as well as the project. Just to the north of that is a senior housing building that has both independent living as well as assisted living and memory care. It's a fairly high-end facility that we are partnering with there. Going to the west side. Oh, by the way, can you see my mouse when I'm? Yes. Okay. Good. Because this wouldn't be making a lot of sense if you couldn't. Okay. To the west side of the main street is an office building right on Route 7. We have a hotel next to that, and then our condo building sits kind of overlooking all the open space around it, and it tapers up from the high school towards the main street. As far as street names, these are all placeholders. So Commons Drive is something that we're actually looking at other street names right now for what that might be. And we are, this was in a recent article, if you didn't see it, the project itself is going to be called West Falls. We're just going to keep it very simple and basic, and then kind of let the building names and the park names over time and as the project overall develops and the tech develops, the neighborhood will either take on that character or not, but we wanted to keep it very simple. That's the overall project. I would point out that right here at the intersection of 7 and Commons has been one of the most difficult pieces to resolve. We've been trying to figure out how to get a traffic light there to work. Initially, we were directed to completely cut that road off from Chestnut out of fear of cut-through traffic going southbound towards Chestnut. In recent months, the direction we've received from VDOT and others is to try to align those and connect them or figure out a way to make the access better, which unfortunately at this point in our planning is difficult to do. So we had come up with this idea of an offset intersection that was rejected about 3 weeks ago. So there's our plan regardless, and we're looking through, what are the options for how we can make this work. But that is an important intersection because the left turn out from Commons takes a lot of pressure off of Haycock. And given where all of you live, I know that's of importance to this community. It's important to us as well. And so we are dedicated to figuring out how to resolve that and working collaboratively with staff and FCDOT and VDOT and the city and both supervisors. So there will be a solution ultimately, but I can't figure out how to look at it. This is the retail plan, and so I just wanted to emphasize here how much retail there is. This is 120,000 feet, including the grocery store. And what's great is almost all of the public streets have retail lining it, so it will feel active and alive and safe and comfortable. On the backside, these kind of aqua spaces are our civic spaces, so potentially a music school is what we're talking to here. And then this is kind of a conference and event space along Route 7. And so you can see, unlike our initial SE application, all of Route 7 and Haycock is now alive and active. So when you're walking on those streets, you will feel like it's safe. There'll be people looking in and out of retail, and you'll be able to feel more comfortable than it is today for obvious reasons. The other thing I'll point out is that there is a connection, both a stair and an elevator connection from Haycock Road up to the Commons. There's a lot of grade, about 20, I think about 23 feet here, between the Commons and Haycock. We tried to make a street work here, but failed because the grades would have been not be handicap accessible. And so eventually we decided, instead of building a street that would not be open and accessible to all, we solved that problem by having the garage split the grade of the street. So you can come at a lower level or an upper level, and the garage will be, will take up that distance. And then we created this really pretty grand stair that connects from this open space up through a passageway to the Commons. So while this isn't an issue for you, since none of you are city of Fallsburg residents, but for kids going to school, it's a safe passageway to get them to the school without them having to be on the main street, that the city is excited about. And also for people that are, at the Giant but want to run and grab something at our place, they'll be able to walk back and forth relatively quickly and easily. And then lastly, just to show you on Haycock, we have a retail space here. Because the grades are so much, we actually have retail underneath the grocery store along Haycock. And so that will enliven the Haycock frontage as well. And that was something that we knew that used to just be residential down there. This is an image of where we're headed architecturally. These are obviously white box, not all the buildings will be white. But you can start to get a sense of what it might look and feel like and the scale. And hopefully what you'll see is there are some tall buildings, but a lot of the buildings are 6-story over retail or 7 stories for the office. I think this is 6 or 5 for the hotel. The condo and the senior housing are our 2 tallest buildings, and that's largely because they want to take advantage of views, in every direction. And they surround the Commons itself to the north, and so that allows the sun to really be highlighted on the main street at all times. And we have done sun and shade studies for this that are in the SEFP application. You guys can take a look at it, and luckily, because of the orientation of the building, it doesn't have a large impact on the surrounding neighborhood, including the residents that are along Haycock. So we have looked at that. The next view is showing you kind of that grand entrance as you're coming up Route 7 towards Haycock, with the grocery store entrance right at the corner. And then there's a secondary entrance up the street towards the Commons. You can see the residential above it. This image is looking straight into the Commons. And so as I mentioned, this entrance will change, we think for the better, quite frankly, and potentially give us a little bit more open space. But the idea of the park remains. And right now, Virginia Tech's concept is to continue that park for the next block. So you have this great long, kind of 800-foot long park, linear park that goes through those 2 properties and then connects to the model. This is a view looking from the high school. You can see the high school plaza here, condo building. One of the changes is we did set the condo building back from the high school plaza. It used to be right up against it. We've now put a street in between there to just make the flow of cars, pedestrian bikes better, and also give a little bit more space for the high school plaza. And then now we're looking from Virginia Tech towards Route 7. You're seeing the main retail garage on the left, and then the Commons here, the senior housing building. The reason that's ghosted is that we don't have the architecture for that building yet. The senior housing developer that we're working with is a few months behind us. And so that will follow shortly behind and catch up with us. So architecture, I'll just flip through these quickly and then I'm happy to answer questions. The main apartment building architecture has 2 different types of styles. So the architecture that's closest to the city of Fallsburg with the corner of Haycock and 7 has a more historic appeal. It's the type of building you could imagine, in old downtown Washington or old downtown Baltimore, New York. It's a red brick building. It has some really pretty brick details that you're seeing up and down the columns. We are working on this base, so you can ignore some of those striped columns. That's going to go away. But this gives you a sense of what that's going to look like. The retail canopy and retail entry is centered right here. That's the grocery entry, I should say. And then down here is the additional retail space as you get down toward Baycott. Because this is such a big building, we've broken it up into multiple different facades. So we have a kind of a historic looking building at the corner. We have a more modern interpretation in different color palettes as you get further down Baycott. And then we have a very modern building as you get towards the Commons, and we'll see that in a moment. So this is as you get towards the Commons. And so these are white brick panels, or white brick, I should say, with surrounded by a metal panel in the gray. And then this is a wood colored panel, a wood motif panel. It's really pretty, and kind of the orange wood color really has a striking, it stands out in a really striking way against the white and the silver. And so this is obviously a much more modern building, and the idea is that these really do look and feel like two different buildings, even though they are one. And that gives a lighter and airier feeling when you're on the Commons itself. And then the third part of this building, this is down by the Federal Realty Shopping Center. This is that staircase I was talking about that takes you up to the Commons. There's an elevator right in here as well. And then this open space down here, we are hoping that this retail space will be a daycare. And so that daycare would then be able to use this outdoor space for their outdoor play space. And then evenings and weekends, that play space could be open, hopefully open for community members, depending on who the retail tenant is. And with daycare, we'll now have daycare, middle school, high school, small apartments, regular size apartments, condos, largely for empty nesters, assisted living, and memory care. So we'll have everyone represented on site with the exception of elementary school kids. So we'll have to bus the elementary school kids in. The second building is the office building, also a fairly modern building. And this was some of this, what you're seeing, we got feedback in our initial SE application on architecture that I think some people felt we weren't bold enough. We hadn't gone as modern as some people wanted. The City of Falls Church does not have a modern motif to it, and there were people that wanted to see on this site something that was different. And so we've revised that, and so it's a more glass, modern, and this building has almost an Art Deco feel to the lobby entry, and then this kind of really cool panel where you see the name of the building or the number of the building as well as the lobby. The next building is the hotel. This rendering is still being updated. The base is not an accurate reflection. That's all being changed, but you get a sense for the architecture of the hotel above. Once again, relatively modern with wood panels and some panel materials around glass. This we'll have more renderings. We're actually creating the renderings right now. So these are just kind of quick sketches done by the architects, but the real renderings will be ready in about a month when we present to the City Council. And then this building is our condo building, which obviously is very kind of a unique look and feel for the City of Falls Church. It picks up on some of the high school detailing where they have these kind of wrapped windows with multiple inset levels within them. And this is a white brick building with a gray brick or panel material separating the units inside with a lot of balconies and open air. And part of the goal of this building was to do something that was fresh and unique and really hasn't been done in and around the City of Falls Church in any of the other buildings that have been developed to date. This is a look at the other view of the other side of that building with the music school on the bottom floor. I'll just take a break for 1 second. So as I mentioned, we are now working on actual renderings that will show how this all fits together. So you'll see all the buildings together and rendered. Our first presentation to the City Council is July 6th. So that's when this will all be kind of public for the first time. And then we have a series of public boards and commissions meetings throughout July and August into September, where we'll be getting into much more detail on architecture and design and planning. And so forgive me because these materials are what we submitted, but there's more attractive materials coming. This is our overall site plan. So we'll get into a little bit of what the Commons is going to look and feel like. And one of the most critical things is the coordination that we're doing with Virginia Tech to the north and WMATA to the north of that. And so, as was mentioned at the beginning, Rushmark and HIT Construction are redeveloping the Virginia Tech site. Rushmark, Hoffman, and UIA are developing the WMATA site. UIA and Hoffman are developing this site. So all of us are working together and collaboratively on the plan. And what we hope to do is at the next meeting be able to share a consolidated plan that shows how this whole grid of streets works together and how this park starts coming together. So what you're seeing in light blue are the bike lanes on both sides of the park. We still have this great central commons park space. There's a lawn in the middle. There's a kind of a hardscape plaza space that has an outdoor fire pit and ping pong tables and some fun things to do. There's swings overlooking the park space. And there is a kind of a stage element where people can sit on these really awesome steps leading up to a retail kiosk on the north side, which is a retail tenant. There's a splash area for kids, a water fountain area. So there's something for everybody in this plan, whether it's just sitting and watching the activity or taking part in it. And we really concentrated the energy and the placemaking in this central space. And I won't share it tonight, so I don't want to make this meeting go much longer, but at one of our future meetings, I can come back and give you more detail on placemaking and branding and all the kind of fun stuff we're doing on the buildings with art and murals and what's really going to make this place come alive. The next slide is a big one. These are just details that show the actual plans of those central spaces, so I can come back and answer questions if anybody has using these. From a wayfinding perspective, this slide is talking about our circulation. And so you see we have a traffic light at Mustang Alley. Mustang Alley is what the school named their entrance street because they are the Mustangs. And then so there'll be a traffic light there. There'll be a traffic light into the main garage for the project because that's where the grocery store is located and one of the retail garages. You can also access that garage from Mustang Alley or from the Commons. There'll be, hopefully, there'll be a new traffic light here on Route 7. And these will be timed so that they work to move the flow of traffic as quickly as possible. The blue dashed lines are the shared use paths / bike lanes. The orange arrows show you obviously the ways that cars go. The orange are the one-way streets, the blue are the two-way streets. And then the next slide shows you what happens during the hour in the morning and hour in the evening or late afternoon when the school's buses are doing pickup. They will pick up in this zone right here, and that will become a one-way street during that period of time. The rest of the time, it's a two-way street, so the grid is really connected. So on a Saturday, if you're trying to drive to Tyson's, you could easily come this way and avoid this whole intersection altogether and avoid the retail street if you want to. But from the morning from, I think it's 7 or 7:15 to 8:15-ish, and in the afternoon around 2 to 3, this will be blocked off of buses. And we've also continued to design the project so that all of the garages are accessible from the outside streets, so that if we ever want to close this down for a festival, we'll be able to do that. And we've talked about Baseball Falls Church or Battle of the Bands, and this is probably 6 to 12 times a year max, where there might be an event on a Friday night or a Saturday, and the community would obviously be invited to. I won't get into detail on this, but we have bike parking locations and bike share. We have dog relief areas we've been thinking about. So where do we incorporate spaces for people with pets to go without ruining the landscaping? And they're typically right outside of the residential building entrances. We have ride share drop-off locations. So if you want to meet an Uber, whether it's here or here, those would be 2 good locations to pick up an Uber. If Uber still exists, then that's a project. So that's the overall project. And then I do have additional slides just depending on what questions are asked. And we'll continue to give you updates over the next 6 months. The schedule is we hope that the city will approve this plan by December, January. The school construction is intended to be complete by December. They're on track at this point. And then we would likely start construction on portions of the project next spring, like demolition and things of that sort. And then the project itself would start construction sometime next summer or fall in 2021 and deliver in 2023.
Thanks for
Brian and Michelle, did you want me to also share the FAR?
I think Pam was going to do that, but
We'll do
first,
that
I guess we can see if there are any questions. Thanks for giving that presentation, Evan. I know it's important to you all, members of the task force, and that the county, that the everything happening on the city side integrates well with what's happening at Virginia Tech and WMATA. I think we're kind of in a fortunate situation where all the development teams between the three sites are tied together or are the same in some cases. So with that, are there any questions? Linda, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I just wondered, just in general with this development and the WMATA development, the one down the way at West Street, because of the virus, it seems like companies are, will be having their employees work from home.
Right.
And so do you see that might change as far as having more of a glut with office space, or do you think the future is still good for office space?
Excellent question, which I wish I could answer definitively, because I don't know the answer to that question. It's a good question. I mean, we read a lot about what experts are thinking about office in the future, and I hear half the time you hear there'll be less office space because people will telecommute and we have to work from home, which quite frankly, I would love to do more days. It's been great to be with my kids. Equally, all these requirements coming in that instead of having open offices with tight cubicles or tight people sitting right next to each other, that more and more people are going to want more space. So for example, the EYA's office, which we typically have 40 to 50 people in our main headquarters, on a daily basis, we are going to start repopulating the office at the end of June, and we are fitting about 20 in that office space comfortably, where people don't have to be within 6 feet of somebody and they can have their own space. So there's, we don't know. I think we actually really just don't know that it could end up being that there's about an even swap of people that end up working from home and those that end up working in more luxurious spaces. We may go back to the age of people having offices again. Which is really not something that we've seen for 10 to 15 years. So I don't know. Why we are confident here is the majority of our project is residential, which is still in short supply in this region. We do think retail will come back. Our retail has been grocery and restaurant focused here for the most part, which are, if restaurants haven't come back at all for 2 to 3 years, then we've got bigger problems as a society. And the office component is only 125,000 square feet. It's relatively small and it's new. So our theory on that is the extent companies are going to go back and have larger office spaces, the idea of being in a smaller building where there's less tenants and less parking versus a big 300,000 office building is maybe a benefit. And so we think there will be a market for that. Plus, we'll have a new building with better HVAC systems, and it will be a LEED green building, so there'll be better air quality for the people that are working in the building. So we are very confident about it right now, but that could change. I mean, we don't know. Do we know for certain that we'll be able to finance this project in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, or 24 months? We don't, and no one has a crystal ball on that. But as I see more or learn more anecdotes or hear more research as to what we really need, we can keep you guys updated on that.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other questions? Stephanie, I see your hand up. I don't know if that was from earlier or if you have a question or a comment now.
Maybe Stephanie needs to unmute. Is she trying to answer?
No, I was trying to lower my hand.
Oh.
Click on raise hand again, right?
That's right. Yeah, oh, it's up
But
again
now it's up again though.
Is it down? Okay. Sorry.
And Linda, your hand is still up. I assume that that was just left over from your question a moment ago. And Commissioner Olfelder, I see your hand up. I don't know if you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, I had a question. I was just going to ask Evan, what was the response of the folks in Falls Church to your presentation? What were there critical questions, or were they excited, or how did they respond?
Good question. So far we've only presented to city staff.
Okay.
Our council presentation will be July 6th, and then
July 6th, yeah.
And then the boards and commissions. But we have presented at this point to, I shouldn't say just staff, because in staff, because the council members are on boards and commissions, there were some council members in those meetings too. It's been very positive so far. People are excited about the architectural changes. I think, quite frankly, given the economy and where we're at, people are excited to see a project happen. So there's relief that that we're still a partner and we're still trying to make this project happen. And I'd say the biggest concern the city has is the intersection at Route 7 and Commons, that they really want a traffic light. I think it's important not just for this project, but for the whole system that we're creating here. And they are concerned also, and this may be a battle they lose, about what VDOT wants on Route 7, that VDOT might want extra lanes or potentially an extra lane on Route 7 that could make it a wider experience for pedestrians trying to cross the street. The city, as you know, in the church itself is very wedded to 2 lanes in both directions, and that's it. And so that is a battle that will play out over the next year as VDOT starts reviewing the plan. So those are 2 things they're very focused on. Other than that, this is in accordance with what we submitted with the SEE. So there's not, they've already been through hundreds of community meetings and review on what we had already done. So most of the changes have been really well received so far. Were you just asking a question, or I think you're muted again?
No, I was just thanking you for the answer.
Okay, thank you.
And any more questions right now? We'll have a little bit of time later for Q&A and discussion. I don't see any hands raised. All right, we can move on to the next part of the presentation. I think Pam from EYA is going to give a little information. Just, I guess, on a point for what's happening next on the agenda. We've had a couple questions at the last task force meeting in February, a few questions before that, and I've received some questions by email since then. And so we just want to address some of those this evening. I guess there's been some question about building height and FAR. There's the study for both WMATA and Virginia Tech sites was approved for studying a plan amendment up to a certain floor area ratio. And I guess since then, there have been questions about the relationship between height and FAR and how can you increase height without increasing the floor area ratio and adding more square footage and more residential units. So I'm going to pass it off to Pam from EYA. One moment. Okay, Pam,
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. I am making you the presenter. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, share screen. Can you see? Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, as Brian mentioned, we heard there have been some questions about building heights and the relationship between density and building heights. So we just put together a quick slide to discuss something called floor area ratio. And I am not a professional planner, so Brian and Michelle, please, jump in if I'm making any gross errors. But Floor area ratio is basically a tool that limits the amount of density we can build on a particular site. It's just the ratio of a building's total square footage to the size of the parcel that it sits on. So, there's a few examples of different FARs on this slide. And if you have different FARs, depending on your building coverage area on the parcel, you can have different types of development. So if you have an FAR of 1, for example, you could build a 1-story building that covers the entire property edges. So, if you have a 10,000 square foot parcel and a 10,000 square foot building, that's an FAR of 1, and it's just going to eat up all of your open space. With an FAR of 1, you can also build a 2-story building that takes up half of your parcel area, or a 4-story building that takes up a quarter of your parcel area. It just allows you to go a little bit higher, but you're keeping your total square footage of the building. Say this is 10,000 square feet, 10,000 square foot parcel. It's still an FAR of 1. You're just going higher. And the relationship between this, building floor plate and parcel area is coverage, building coverage. And FAR projects, like I mentioned, different projects with the same FAR but different coverage, building coverage, will produce different types of development. So a low-rise building versus a high-rise building. And at the WMATA site, we are, I think the SSPA nomination was for a 0.96 FAR. So the ratio of the building square footage to the parcel is 0.96. We could have a 1-story building on 96% of the entire site, or we could go higher and use a smaller portion of the parcel area, which opens up additional space for open spaces, green spaces. We're proposing some natural areas on the site, and by going higher on the site, up to a certain level, that allows us to fill in the areas around the buildings with nice open spaces and amenities that can benefit the community.
And one thing I'll just jump in and add, because Pam, that was fantastic, is David, one of the questions you had asked was the relationship between FAR and traffic. And it's really not if the FAR is 1, it doesn't matter how you build it, whether it's tall or short, it's the same number of people, the same number of car trips, the same number of paths on the facilities or on the adequate public facilities of the area. It's just how it lays out on the site. So that's why as long as the FAR is acceptable or the unit count per acre, whether there's extra height to allow more flexibility doesn't increase traffic or people there.
Thanks, Evan and Pam. I think that was a good summary. Anybody have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I do. Yeah. Wait a second. Am I unmuted? I think I am.
Unmuted.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I guess I do understand FAR. I've seen it before, so I appreciate the explanation. So I guess the benefit that you all think, Pam, that you're getting out of this is a benefit to the community of allowing more green space, open space, and all that. So am I correct then, though, that you said that the application was contemplating an FAR of what, 0.96 for the whole development?
Yeah.
Okay, so am I correct then that you have not changed even though you're changing the heights of some buildings, you have not raised that FAR?
No, we're not.
Okay.
David, just a clarifying point there. The WMATA, the board authorized a planned study up to 0.96 FAR for the WMATA tract. For Virginia Tech, it was 2.5.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I should clarify. It's 9.96 for just the WMATA site.
And it's 2.5 for Virginia Tech?
That's right.
Okay.
I just want
a lot of green space in there, I guess, probably are they? But
well, and that one of our initial comments to the developers after they showed us their concepts last October, November, was that we'd like to see more green space. the Fairfax County Park Authority noted there wasn't enough green space being provided. And I know that was one of your concerns also at the last task force meeting.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
I just want to, David, real quick, throw in there for context that Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, the City of Falls Church site is, the FAR is 3.0, right? Up to 3.0, I think.
It's up to 4.0 and we're at a 3.4. And then if you were to, yeah, I mean, the City of Falls Church, a lot of the buildings in the downtown are in the 2 to 4 range. Within Corner, you can go up to 10, or, you know, unlimited if you're right at the metro, but 6 tends to be the max. So a 1 FAR near a metro station will be one of the least dense metro station FARs in the region, probably in the whole metro system, because typically you have somewhere in the 2 to 4 range when you're that close to metro. But and not saying that that's not appropriate. It's in a residential neighborhood, so, but it's a very reasonable FAR relative to other metro stations.
Let's see, do we have any other questions from the task force related to this? I don't see any hands raised. I am going to take control of presenting back from you. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
And so the next item I wanted to address was the current comprehensive plan recommendations. At the last meeting, I mentioned the base plan recommendations and recommendations for the maximum level of development. And I think there may have been a little bit of confusion on the terminology that I used. So I just want to clarify those terms for everyone. And I think this will also clearly show the difference between what's planned for the study area today and what's being proposed on the geotech sites. So today, in the West Falls Church comprehensive plan for the West Falls Church TSA, the tracts of land that we're talking about have recommendations for development at 3 different intensities, from the lowest to highest being base, intermediate, and maximum. And for the base development, there are no additional requirements or recommendations in the plan in order to develop at the base recommendations. So that would mean just developing by what's called by right, which doesn't require any kind of zoning application. It would just require, you know, getting your normal permits. For the intermediate and maximum levels of development, those would require some sort of zoning permit. So that would mean, you know, submitted something like a rezoning application or a special exception, and those go before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And as part of the review of those applications, the board and county staff, when they're reviewing them, check for harmony with the comprehensive plan. So, you know, although we say the zoning ordinance is the regulations and the comprehensive plans are recommendations, that's when those recommendations are realized, when those places like this, when those zoning applications come through. So for their intermediate level of development, for the study area, it's recommended in the comprehensive plan for public facilities and for 40 dwelling units. And if in order to develop at that level, there are certain development guidelines in the TSA plan for both specifically for the MATA and Virginia Tech tracts, but also for the entire transit development area. And in order to develop at the intermediate level, some of those guidelines would have to be met. And then to develop at the maximum level, all of those site-specific guidelines and the all of the transit development area guidelines would have to be met by the development proposal. And so for the study area for the WMATA and Virginia Tech tracts, the maximum recommendation is for 850 dwelling units. and about 44,000 square feet of office or retail space. There's also an option to replace that office and retail space in 130 of those dwelling units. When I say dwelling unit, that's a condo or a townhouse, or an apartment or something of that nature. To replace the office and retail space in 130 of those dwelling units with up to 240,000 square feet of institutional use. And so at Virginia Tech, that's the option that's been pursued there already with Virginia Tech's Northern Virginia Center. And to just give a comparison, and to just give a comparison between the current maximum recommended level development and what's been proposed so far by the applicants, we have at the WMATA site, again, the recommended maximum of 720 dwelling units, so 720 apartments or condominiums. And they're proposing, and these are all maximums. Again, they're not proposing all of these necessarily, but up to 820 multifamily units, 80 townhouses, 125,000 square feet of office, 30,000 square feet of retail. But all of this together, as again, could not exceed 0.96 FAR, as was explained earlier. And for the Virginia Tech site, again, there's the maximum, the plan today of 240,000 square feet of institutional space. That's compared against the proposed development there of 500 multifamily units, 125,000 square feet of institutional space. That would be both the Virginia Tech offices and classroom and the National Institute of Smart Construction that they've discussed in previous meetings, and 250,000 square feet of office space and 50,000 square feet of retail. And that, as I said, would be could not exceed 2.5 AR. And I guess, are there any questions related to that before I move on to the next? See if I can bring up. David, your hand is up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just briefly, where do we find these slides that you're showing us, or do we already have them in our materials somewhere?
You don't. I will be posting them online.
Okay.
I should be posting them tomorrow.
Okay,
Assuming
great.
I don't have any issues getting everything ADA compliant.
Okay, great.
I will try to get them online tomorrow, but if not, they will definitely be.
Well, mainly so we have access to them, that's all. It doesn't matter to me when, just so we can see them. Thank you.
And Paul, I saw your hand is up.
Yeah, so just two questions. Number one, when you said it's 2 dwelling units, that just means they're currently authorized to have like 2 houses added? Is that what that means?
That's for the, so currently I included everything for the entire study area as a whole. The 2 dwelling unit recommendation at the base recommendation is specifically for the parcel that includes the Virginia Tech courtyard. And so if under just, like I said, the base recommendation where there wouldn't be any requirement to fulfill any of the site-specific development criteria or any of the transit development area wide development criteria, that is what the plan recommends.
Okay, and then the other question is, you said, someone said there was a 0.96 and that was one of the lowest, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any other metro station? What is the metro station in the system that is closest to the 0.96 FAR or that people would consider a peer to this site? So I could, assuming you can ever get on the metro again, go over and take a look at it.
I don't have that information handy right now. I can look it up and get back to you. Let me see if Andy Scott, he's still on here. Let me unmute him. I don't know if he may know that off the top of his head.
No, I don't have that. I'm checking with Stephen as well. I think he's listening in.
Yeah, I can unmute Stephen really quickly. Stephen?
The
question again? I was putting my kid to bed, sorry.
Sorry, Stephen.
The question is, what is it, we're at a 0.96, is there a peer station in the entire system? I don't know, it could be even towards Hyattsville or something like that. I would just like to see a station that looks kind of like what you're envisioning here.
Oh, yeah, we can totally, for the next meeting, bring a number of stations that both match in FAR and in terms of jobs and households.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Paul, did you have any other questions? All right, moving on. I don't see any other hands raised. And so that brings us to the affordable housing requirements. At the last meeting, I noted the development here would require at least 15% of the housing to be affordable to low or moderate income households. This is not a countywide requirement. It's one of the 10 development criteria in the existing West Falls Church Transit Plan. One of the development criteria I just mentioned that would be required to build at either the intermediate or maximum level of development. And the TSA plan doesn't define what constitutes affordable housing, but in Fairfax County, we recognize two types of affordable housing units. The first which are called ADUs, or affordable dwelling units, and the second of which are called WDUs, workforce dwelling units. So ADUs provide housing that's affordable to households making less than 70% of the area median income, or AMI. Sorry to throw a bunch of acronyms at you. I'm not sure if everybody knows what the area median income is, but it sounds exactly like what it is. So if you took all of the households in the Washington, D.C. metro region and arranged them from the households with the lowest income and the household with the highest income, the AMI is the households in the very middle of that range. WDUs, the workforce dwelling units, on the other hand, provide housing to a wider range of household incomes. So the county is currently considering changes to its WDU program, but at present it provides affordable housing to households making 120% or less of AMI, 100% or less of AMI, or 80% or less of AMI. And the ADU program is part of the zoning ordinance, which, as I mentioned before, is a regulation. And the WDU program is part of the comprehensive plan, which is a recommendation. The extent to which a project with the residential component, like the ones we're seeing here, conform to the WDU policy is reviewed with zoning applications, as I said earlier. So when a rezoning application or a special exception is submitted and reviewed, part of the process is that they check with harmony with the comprehensive plan. So in this case, they'd be checking against the comprehensive plan, which recommends the 15% affordable housing. And if there are recommendations of a higher percentage of affordable housing than what's required by the ADU ordinance and the zoning ordinance, the remainder can be supplied as the workforce dwelling units. So for example, if the ADU ordinance only required 5% of units for a project be affordable dwelling units, but the comprehensive plan recommended a minimum of 15%, as is the case here, the additional 10% could be supplied as workforce dwelling units. And finally, the ADU ordinance only applies to certain types of development, and it applies differently to different types of development. So, for example, there are different requirements for multifamily housing with or without structured parking, and different requirements for single family housing. And the type of construction can also affect whether a project is subject to the ADU ordinance. So if it's, if it's a wood frame building versus a concrete building. Because of these differences, it's likely that most of the affordable housing in the West Falls Church transit station area would be developed as workforce dwelling units. And then finally, there were also some questions about eligibility requirements for affordable housing. Eligibility is determined only by household income. and not by age or education status or anything else. It's only household income. And let's see, so that's it on affordable housing. I don't know if there are any questions, Paul. I see you have your hand up. I'm not sure if that was left up earlier.
No, I do have a question. So
Okay.
if the question I'd originally posed was the effect of student housing. So if the average student makes nothing, right, and is living off loans or whatever, or is part-time working and they're living in student housing at Virginia Tech, does that qualify as affordable housing?
It's not affordable housing based off of the person's income living there. Affordable housing is a designation, like a particular unit of housing is reserved as affordable, and to be eligible to live in that housing, to rent there or to purchase it, you have to fall within a certain income.
Okay, thank you.
And Cheryl, I see your hand is up.
So I'm brand new to this, and I unfortunately did not understand anything you said. So my question is, we have 15%. Is it a requirement for this development, yes or no?
Yes, it is a requirement.
Requirement for the development. Okay, question number 2 is, how are we going to resolve that in 10 words or less?
I guess, what do you mean by resolve that?
How
how is it going to be built?
How are we going to accommodate 15% affordable housing requirement? I'm sorry, this is brand new to me, and I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, the developer has to dedicate 15% of the units as affordable units, and that would be done as part of
the condos, the apartments, the student house. That's across everything?
All, yeah, for the number of units that they, if they're proposing 900 units, 15, or 1,000 units, 150 of those would have to be affordable units.
Regardless of whether it's the nursing home, the small apartments, the big apartments, the condos,
Well, like I said, it's the only requirement for the affordable units is the income level.
But I'm not talking, I understand that. I'm talking about the physical buildings there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying it's across the condos, the office, no, not the office. So it'd be the condos, the senior living, and the apartments.
Cheryl, this is Michelle. I just, when during the negotiation stage, at the zoning stage, we try to encourage a range of units across. So it's not just one type specifically, but it's based on the residential units.
So 15% of each one of those 3 types of units that I mentioned will be affordable housing designated.
Not of those types of units, not necessarily like of senior or of of townhouse. It's something that I can't necessarily tell you how many of each apartments or townhouses or what have you would be affordable today, because that's something that is arrived at later on in the process, in the zoning process. But when that is arrived at during the zoning application, the developers required, because of what's in the comprehensive plan, to provide the 15% of affordable housing.
So it's kind of a TBD.
It's TBD in terms of what form that eventually takes.
Gotcha. So 15% is in TBD as to where it is.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Oh, no. Happy to. And Evan, I see your hands up.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to reference this because our company has a ton of experience building affordable units. That's one of the things we're known for in the region. So what is often typical, and every jurisdiction is a little different, in the projects we've done in Fairfax, the county typically prefers that the affordable units are in rental product versus for sale, just because it's Once you sell a unit to somebody as an affordable unit, you kind of lost that affordable unit in the system. So on other projects where we built townhomes and apartments, we might have a few townhomes that are affordable, but typically the affordable units are in the apartment buildings, so they stay in the system for 99 years as affordable units, and the county always has access to them. On the high school site, for example, the affordable units from the condo are being built in the multifamily apartment building instead of in the condo. And that also helps with one of the issues that affordable housing advocates will admit: when residents are in a condo and on an affordable income, as the condo fee rises over time, it can often outpace their fixed income, and they get to a place where they can't afford the special assessments that are required by law to be equally spent amongst the various units. So, so oftentimes, kind of best practices is that those units would be provided in rental housing instead. But then within the rental building, there would be a mix of unit types, from studios to 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms to separate types of affordable units. And there may be some for sale units also, just depending on how the negotiation goes at the CDP stage.
Thank you, Evan. Anyone else? All right, moving on. So in December, the developer's transportation consultant provided the preliminary projections for future traffic generation. And at our last meeting in February, I shared the Fairfax County Public Schools projected student generation for the site. Back in February and in the intervening months, I've received a couple questions about what was assumed in those projections. So as I mentioned, the student generations projections represented a kind of worst case scenario. And as you can see here, that prediction was based on the same assumptions that were used for the preliminary traffic forecast. And so just under 1,500 mid or high-rise residential units and 76 single-family attached units or townhouses. And you know, as I showed in the earlier slide, you know, what we're looking at in terms of the maximum residential development in terms of unit numbers, you can see these are higher than what we're actually looking at for the site as a total. So that is kind of what I meant back in our last meeting in February, that when we saw the student generation numbers, that was that represented kind of the far end of the spectrum and kind of what we could expect to see. And then finally, on the right side, we have the different assumptions for the trip generation. So I already mentioned the residential components. It also assumes 300,000 square feet of office, 112,000 square feet of residential, and we're missing a zero there, 160,000 square feet of institutional use. And so what the transportation consultant did is they consulted something called the ITE Trip Generation Manual, the Institute of Traffic Engineers. And for different land use types, they have a average daily trip count. And so they use that to project how many vehicle trips they expect to see generated from the development here. And so they have a different trip generation amount for each of those different types. And there's a question in terms of, you know, is there a different trip generation rate for affordable housing or for graduate student housing, for senior housing than, you know, for multifamily or townhouse? There is not one in the ITE manual for affordable housing or for graduate student housing, but there is for independent living, senior housing, or assisted living. And those are both lower trip generation rates than in multifamily or townhouse types of development. And then finally, we have our timeline or our milestones. I know I'd received a couple emails over the last few months asking if we were still on track for a July Planning Commission public hearing. I can say with certainty that we are not. I know that was what we were originally looking at in the timeline last year. COVID has kind of thrown a wrench in things. So right now, we're really still in the review the development proposal and impact analysis. Later in the year, we're looking at having a public meeting. Eventually, what form that takes, we're not sure yet. And then finally, moving on, I guess, DPD, or planning development, we will have our preliminary recommendation. The task force will create its recommendation, can either concur with our recommendation or concur with some caveats or make an entirely different recommendation to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And at that point, the task force will have concluded. The county staff will then send our staff report to the Planning Commission, at which point the Planning Commission will have a public hearing where your recommendation will be presented, our recommendation will be presented, and any members of the task force or any members of the public would of course be welcome to go to the Planning Commission hearing and offer comment. After that, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who will then have another public hearing, and in which case there will be, yet another another opportunity to comment, and the Board of Supervisors will decide whether to adopt a plan amendment. Evan, I see your hand up. I don't know if that's left up from earlier or went down. I don't hear you, so I think it was left up.
Yeah, sorry. That was a mistake.
Okay. And Paul, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Let's say the vote of the task force is not unanimous. Is there room for a dissenting report or dissenting comments that can be submitted as part of the task force recommendation?
I would have to check with our rules. I'm not sure that is customary. Michelle, do you know if that is something that we've done before? We of course always like to have a consensus among the task force.
I think, the way the short answer, I guess, is yes. What we usually try to do is to find where those disagreements are and try to work through it as much as we can in the process. But it's not to say that hasn't happened before. And if you want to do it, it's up to the task force to do that, to summarize those opinions. And, if we get to that point, we'll try to work through it as the best we can. But if we can't come to some consensus or conclusion on things, then that, that has happened before. It's not unheard of.
And then again, as I said, there's opportunity for comment both at both the public hearings, the Planning Commission hearing and the Supervisors hearing. Any other questions? All right, and were there any questions on any of the earlier presentations that anybody hadn't thought of earlier but has since come up with? Stephanie, I see your hand up.
Yes, we've heard quite a bit from the City of Falls Church and their plans. And of course, we had a lovely presentation from Evan on WMATA. I don't believe we've heard from Virginia Tech yet, have we?
I know the Virginia Tech, so the Virginia Tech site, we did hear from them back in, I guess, was it December? Maybe. And I know Evan has presented a couple of times on what's happening over at Virginia Tech, and Neil has presented what's happening over at Virginia Tech. Next month, we are hoping to be in a position so that we can look at a combined concept for Virginia Tech and WMATA. I know Evan is in the process of and his team's in the process of looking at some potential revisions from what we last saw on the WMATA site as well. So
yeah, hey, Neil's on the phone. I think he could probably.
here, let me.
Rushmark's working on plans and can probably share something shortly. I'll let him talk about.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to wait till Brian got done. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we Virginia Tech and HIT have both been progressing plans. In their case, it's a little bit different than a typical development because we're working inside out as opposed to outside in. So much of what that project is based on is based on the lab itself. So they're working on the internal building design and then working outwards on that building. Nothing has materially changed as far as what the building or even positioning of those buildings from what we presented in November, December. So it's two buildings. The northern building will have the combined HIT contracting building and Virginia Tech. It's roughly 340,000 square feet, 90,000 at grade, including this 50,000 square foot lab or institute. And there'll be two towers on top. One is 150,000 square feet, and the other one 75,000 square feet. So that really hasn't changed. We think those two towers will be staggered. One will have a height of 135 feet, maybe a little bit less. There'll be a shorter tower that'll be anywhere from 75 to 90 feet. We're not 100% sure. And the residential building across the street on Budding Haycock, we think that'll be close to 130 feet. It's going to have varying heights and it can have a unique design. But both of them will actually have some pretty interesting design features to them. One of the things that we have started developing out, but we haven't shared with staff yet, is area between the two buildings. We think it's actually going to be a little bit wider and more robust as far as open space goes than what is in the city. So we're anticipating some bigger setbacks, some more open space, and some creative stuff that goes on in the.
Thanks, Neil. Are there any other questions? And let's see. Next, we had opportunity for questions and answers from the public. Let me see if there are any hands raised. Let's see so far. So, Ben Wiles, I'm going to unmute you real quick.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Ben. I don't know if you're on your phone. Are you able to use the raise hand feature as an attendee? I'm just concerned because I haven't seen. Okay, I just didn't see any raised hands. I wanted to make sure it was working.
For anyone that's at least on their phone, on the top right-hand corner, there's a figure of a person with 3 dashes. And then if you go scroll down and find your name, on the bottom of that screen, there's a raise hand feature.
Thanks, Ben. All right, not seeing any more questions, and we're just about at 9 o'clock, so it's been a little longer actually than I was expecting it to tonight. So we've reached the end of our meeting. Like I said, I'm recording it and I will be posting it online hopefully later this week. I should have everybody's email address, certainly everybody in the task force's email address. I should have everybody's email address that has registered for the event. So I will send that link out to everybody along with the slides from this evening, which I'll post online. The next task force meeting will be on the normal time and date, the third Tuesday of July, which is July 21st at 7 p.m. I will send out a registration link to everybody, like I did this last time. And I'll post a registration link online as well on our meetings webpage for the project. Be certain not to use the same link that you used for this meeting. It will no longer function. You have to use a different link for each meeting. And in the meantime, if anybody has any questions between now and then, feel free to email me. I had it up on the screen earlier. I can put it back up for a moment. But it is just brian.boteo@fairfaxcounty.gov. And see here if I can get it to go over to my other screen. I have it up on the screen now, and it will also be posted. This will also be included in the links posted online so everybody can see it. I think I have it posted. No, I'm not sharing, am I?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight at our first try virtual meeting. I hope everyone's staying safe and sane while at home. And then we anticipate July will be a virtual meeting also. So.
July will be a virtual meeting as well. So thank you all for attending tonight for our first run through, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Brian and Michelle.
Thank you, David.
Good night, everyone.